Hi friends, welcome back, and it is the last wrap up of the year. The start of this month was very rough for me, so I thought I wouldn't watch a lot of movies, but I ended up watching maybe the most. I don't know. A lot. I watched the worst TV show basically rated of the whole year, and we'll get to that at the very end of this video, but I gave out a 5-star and a couple of 4 stars during what I watched in the month in film. And a lot of you guys ask, how do I watch this much? Well, I have help from today's sponsor, which is Surfshark. Surfshark is a VPN, which stands for Virtual Private Network. Not only does it encrypt your information, your private information, and keep you protected while you're online surfing, it can also unlock geo-blocked content. And for example, this month I watched ATM and I could only access it by switching over my Surfshark to America to be able to watch it on Tubi. I couldn't find it anywhere else. It's a real lifesaver for me. You wouldn't believe the amount of films I've been able to unlock by using Surfshark to rent them. Also, one subscription gets you unlimited devices, so I can use it on my phone, on my smart TV, on my laptop, wherever you surf the internet. Surfshark is there for you. And at the moment, you can get an exclusive Surfshark holiday season deal. Enter the promo code SPOOKY and you can get up to 6 months free. That's 6 additional months free. Don't forget to use the code SPOOKY and use the link in the description down below. Thank you so much to Surfshark for supporting creators like me and helping me unlock so much great content. Now let's dive into everything I watched this month. The first film I watched this month was Dream Scenario, or Scenario, depending on how you say it. I was pleasantly surprised by this film, but it will ruffle a lot of feathers because it's a very strange genre-bending movie, and if you watch my top 10 of this year, it did place. This is such a fantastical ride with Nicolas Cage serving as an average family man who shows up viral in people's dreams. So for some reason, he just keeps showing up all over the place inside people's dreams. And from there, the story is just this wild progression where he tries to make sense of his virality and popularity and everything that comes with that. It's a wild movie that dips in and out of horror, and I just found it to be a pleasant and terrifying ride. And if you haven't seen it, I don't know why, just marketing wasn't very strong on this one, especially in America from what I understand. It is well worth a watch. It's an A24 film and it, it feels like a very A24 film. It's just the most wild story, and I found it to be delightful. It's one I will never forget. After that, I watched It's a Wonderful Knife. I feel like I've spoken about this film so much, so I'll be very quick. This is one I did a review on. I talked about on, what's coming to VOD, but then I also talked about in new Christmas horror movies. It's a new Christmas horror movie it's like a slasher, but it's a play on A Wonderful Life. So Winnie, she stops a slashing in her town, and then a year later she reflects on what happened and what would have happened if she wasn't there to help the situation. A lot of people are very in the middle about this one. I mean, it's got a 2.5. A lot of people loved the characters, but there was just so much going on, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen it by now. I watched Apostle. This is a rewatch because I rewatched this with a bunch of my patrons because I hated this film when I first saw it, and I did a review back when it came out, I guess it was. It's a Netflix original. It has Dan Stevens. It's this story. It sounds like an amazing story. That's the whole thing. The premise and the way the film looks is spectacular. Dan Stevens goes to an island to try and find out what happened to his sister. Yes, it was his sister. This film is so wild. Who's been kidnapped by a religious cult. And there it just turns into this, I mean, it makes sense, but it's a very dragged out, strange story. And it was just very convoluted, and no one is charismatic at all. Not that you have to be charismatic when you go to a cult, but no one is really gripped me, any of their storylines. It was very confusing the way it plays out, even though it's a very simple storyline. Like, I understand what happened, but the way we went to get there, I feel the same way about this film now as I did when I watched it years and years ago. So that was really interesting, finding out that I had the same reaction. I then watched Poor Things. I went and saw this at the cinema. What a fantastic ride. I did a Come With Me for this. This is the new Yorgos film. I love his movies. This movie, I liked it a lot, but I didn't like it as much as these other ones. It wasn't as thrilling, which I knew it was going to be kind of more of a dark drama. It's actually known as a dark comedy, and I call this one disturbing and twisted, but a lot of people thought it was just funny. But it's a really disturbing premise, which I don't want to spoil, but basically a man brings this woman to life. It's Willem Dafoe brings Emma Stone to life, and we follow her as a journey learning about society and the pressures, but also the norms and communication and all that stuff. It's a very sexual film, but it's one of the most beautiful films I've ever seen. It's just stunning. Her outfits are beautiful, and you just never know where it's going next. That's what I really liked about it. I was just stunned the whole film. It's a very interesting ride and well worth your time for sure. I then watched The Last Showing, which was something I watched with my Patreons. One of our friends picked this one. This is a very straightforward slasher set in a theater with Robert Englund. It's this twisted ride where he takes victims who are going to the theater but makes his own kind of film out of the situation. It's a straight up slasher, lots of plot holes, but it's quite fun along the way if you let them go. You have to let them go 100%. And it seems like he had a lot of fun in the role. I didn't love the movie by any means, but he seems like he was having fun, and it was a good one to watch with a group. After this, I watched What Lies Below. I think I confused this with there's another movie that's called What Lies Below that I've seen before. It's like a mid-2000s thriller. This film, very different. This film, very strange. This is a movie, look, everyone hates it. This is a movie about, actually I rated it pretty high, about a single mother who lives with her daughter, and her daughter goes away and comes back, and she has this new boyfriend, and her new boyfriend's very, very sus. It's a very strange film that gets more sci-fi, which I was not expecting it to go that way, but now I look at the cover, it seems kind of obvious. It was just a silly, fun drama that was on Prime, I'm going to be real with you. And I didn't think it was that bad, but you guys hated it. After this, I watched The Sacrifice Game, which is a new Christmas horror on Shudder. And I thought this one was all right. There was definitely some downfall, especially towards the end, but the characters were well developed at the start. The movie takes place during the 70s and is about two students who stay behind, which is so funny because there's another film that I watched this month that is very similar, if you know what it is. Completely different, but same setting, which is so bizarre. But yeah, they stay behind at boarding school, and there they have some intruders, and the intruders want more than blood. It was fine. I would probably recommend checking this one out if you're looking for an easy horror on Shudder. It has some very odd performances at times, but it was a solid story. I thought they were very inventive with the way they went. I then watched May, December. This, I'm going to be full again, another VPN, because this one is not coming out in Australia until February, which is absolutely wild. May, December, love this film. Knew I would love it because I love anything Natalie Portman does. She is just phenomenal, and this also has Julianne Moore, and it is the coolest storyline. Just so fascinating. Natalie Portman is an actress who wants to take the role of a real life, I guess, true crime case. And so I don't want to ruin what it's about if you don't want to look too far into it, but Julianne Moore is her subject, plays a woman who has gotten into a lot of drama throughout her life because of a certain situation, and Natalie Portman comes into her life to really get to know her so she can play her well in this performance. It's the most awkward, full-on rush. It was like a car crash. I couldn't stop watching, and they just both are flawless. And there's just this one part in it, I got goosebumps head to toe, chilling performance, just a phenomenal storyline, so interesting and very twisted, so close, almost too close psychological profile drama, which I love it. Highly, highly recommend it for you guys. I will have my top 10 non-horrors of this year, and I can tell you that's probably on there. After that, I watched The Holdovers, which, look at this, a 5 out of 5 movie. This is another film, like a sacrifice game, set in the 70s in a boarding school where two people get actually it's a group of people who get left behind, but I just think that's so funny. I wasn't expecting to love this film. Another film that's not out in Australia until next year, even though it's a Christmas movie. Freaking bizarre. Not only the performances so well done, but the whole story, it feels so classic, even though it's new. I know it's set in the 70s, but it just has it ticks every single box. It's like you're watching a film that has such a nostalgic value to you and you've never seen it before. I've never seen anything like it. I just felt like it was poetic, funny, sad, and touching, and I absolutely loved it. Basically, it's about a teacher who's not really well liked and his relationship with a troubled young student and them going through Christmas time together. I know it's like a little bit past Christmas now, but if you had Christmas alone, I would highly recommend watching this film, or if you're not very close to your family, I highly recommend watching this film. It was very touching and made me feel less alone. So I would, yes, definitely check it out. Gets my stamp of approval. I thought it was brilliant. I watched The Last 5 Years because I had never seen this movie, and if you're on TikTok at all, you hear people doing the song for this all the time, and I had never really understood what it was. Basically, it's Anna Kendrick and the dude. What is his name? Oh, Jeremy Jordan. I know it's based on a Broadway, is it off Broadway or on Broadway, whatever. It's based on a musical, which the guy wrote about his own life. And it's meant to be about a 5-year relationship. It's told out of order and kind of comes together and explains the full picture by the end of the story. And it's basically, yeah, just different songs along the way of their relationship. A lot of people apparently don't like this film, but I thought it's exactly what I expected it to be. When I knew what it was going in, it hit the nail on the head. Anna Kendrick's giving her all, and I really like her. If you like musicals, probably give it a shot. I'm sure everyone's seen this movie by now. I think I'm the last person on earth. After this, I watched The Starling Girl, which is a movie that I hadn't heard anyone talk about, and I saw randomly on someone else's Letterboxd, and I'm like, what? I read this blurb and I was in. 17-year-old Jem Starling struggles with her place within her Christian fundamentalist community, but everything changes when her magnetic youth pastor returns to their church. This movie had me going, do it girl, don't do it girl. I've never been so flip-flop with a character, which I think was really interesting in a conflict while watching a character. I couldn't watch the screen at some points because it was so awkward. Basically a very sheltered girl who is meant to be denying all of her feelings due to her religion, forced into this moment where she's not sure. Oh, it's the vulnerability, and then she's very naive, and then you kind of take that on as the audience member. It's a very strange kind of, almost like a Stockholm situation while you're watching it. I wanted to like this film a lot more, but the premise it's pretty spot on. It just doesn't go very much further. It's not like a poetic story, but it's a very damning story about personal conflict. The end didn't really work for me. I think that's the part that was meant to be more poetic. That's why I didn't give it a higher score, but I think it's a really challenging drama if you're into that. Yes, that was a very interesting film. I then watched Unwelcome. I don't normally put reviews on there because I get a lot of really strange comments, but I put in what the fuck because this film, have you seen it? It's absolutely bizarre. It's the story of a couple who go through this traumatic event and then they move, I think it's to Ireland, it must be to Ireland, to take over this house that's left to them in a will. And there they're told that they need to feed this thing out the back of their house every day. Otherwise, this creature will come. So, they kind of toy back and forth. Should we do it? Shouldn't we do it? And it's meant to kind of mimic or be like a metaphor for the event that happened to them that traumatized them earlier in their relationship. From there, it just turns into such a wild ride and not good. It is the weirdest way to present trauma, I thought. With these like little creatures as well. The relationship between them is so bizarre, the couple. The choices made by the filmmakers, the whole thing is very confusing, and they hint at things but then they don't follow through. It's like they put emphasis on all of the strange moments instead of the things that actually mattered. This film I would not recommend. It was a weird ride. And then straight after that, I watched The Visitor, which was almost like they were a perfect back-to-back pairing, because double feature from hell. The Visitor is a film there's a couple of other films that are like this that have come out even over the last year. I think another one was called The Portrait. In this one, we follow a man who goes back to the small town of his wife, and he's from the UK and she's American. And there he finds a portrait of someone who looks exactly like him. And he realizes that a lot of people are kind of talking to him like he's someone else. There's this art dealer who's like, don't look into this, go home. You shouldn't be here. And what he finds is honestly one of the most terrifying things I've ever seen in a movie. It makes absolutely no sense though. But I've never seen when someone warns something, you know, the small town crazy guy or woman or whatever warns someone, like, don't do this. I always think like the start of, you know, Friday the 13th, the old man in the pantry, get out. This woman tells him, leave, you don't want to know. And honestly, I've never seen it. They were actually right, because what he finds out is honestly so disturbing and it actually makes no sense. And then the bit that's really disturbing, no one addresses. So I found this film very frustrating to watch. The acting is not great either. The reveal really threw me. And I love really disturbing stuff, but then they didn't really even play into it. So they had all of this ammunition, it felt like. They were like, oh, yep, and moving on. I can't even explain it. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. Would not recommend to you guys. That was just a wild trip. After that, I watched Palm Trees and Power Lines. I went into this completely blind. It was on Amazon Prime, just chucked it on. Very interesting because it has Jonathan Tucker, who I haven't seen in a hot minute. And it's a story about basically a disconnected teenage girl enters a relationship with a man twice her age. It's basically about a girl who feels on the outs of her group. She gets into a really toxic relationship. I don't want to go too much further into that. I will say it goes a lot further, but I don't know if that's technically spoilers, but it is a really dark drama. A warning, but also a very open message movie, which I thought was very strange. It's just like almost like a slice of life film. When I was in uni, that a lot of people would say that, a slice of life film, but it's a slice of very dark life. And it is, I guess, a warning and a way to tell the story of how people get into these toxic relationships and how far they can go. So I'll leave that one there. After that, I watched My Best Friend's Wedding, which of course is... I was all over the place this month. I've never seen this. This is actually kind of sad. The reason I watched it, because I was just feeling so dark about that last film, and I've been, you know, grieving this month. So I'll be grieving for a very long time. But I thought, you know, what's the best thing to watch? Oh, romantic comedy, because it's so removed from the situation. I've never seen this movie. What a villain. What a villain. She is beautiful. Julia Roberts is beautiful, but she's a villain in this movie. If you haven't seen it, I think, again, I'm probably the last person on earth to have not seen this movie. So I always thought My Best Friend's Wedding was about like her girlfriend getting married, like her best friend. I don't know what I thought was gonna happen, but I didn't think this. So it's not even really her best friend, but a guy that she's had like a situationship with. It's not even her best friend. She hasn't spoken to him in months. So much so that he has a fiance who is Cameron Diaz, who I miss so much in film. And she just wants to break up their wedding. That's the whole storyline. So go girl, you go. Lots of people love this movie though. I guess it's a classic. I thought it was fine, but it's just a very weird film for your first viewing, I guess, in your 30s. So that was fun. I watched Friday the 13th with a bunch of my friends. We actually did an online viewing on my from some of my patrons. We did a game where you would have to wear a hat every time the camp counselor came on, and then a mask every time there was a killing or a POV shot from the killer. So it was a really fun watch. Friday the 13th is a very, I don't want to get myself in trouble, but it is a very like basic horror movie. 3 minutes of the film is someone making coffee, like a full... like full, no cuts, no edit, just someone making coffee in real time. The film is, you know, classic for its slashes, and the ending of the film is honestly what makes it for me. But we love Kevin Bacon. I don't know if that's a hot take. I watched Leion. I did a Netflix roulette where I just randomly watched something on Netflix, and I did a challenge for myself where I had to watch whatever it was, and I really regretted it because this is not my kind of film. It's an apocalypse situation where we're in a roadside diner in the middle of America, very strong characters, very almost Stephen King-esque. It's like The Mist almost, how there's all this love triangle and, you know, anyway. And then an angel comes and they need to fight all the demons. So, you know, that's a fun time. There's a lot of scenes in this movie that I had seen before online, a lot of iconic things, moments, monsters, which I really liked what they did with all the fantastical, you know, fantasy elements, the way they showed the demons. I thought that was really cool, but everything else I could kind of leave. But it wasn't as bad as I thought, just to be clear. I'm not an action person, so I want to be completely clear and transparent that this was probably not a film for me. After this, I watched Raging Grace, which I've spoken about a little bit. I loved this film, loved it, and it was completely out of nowhere for me. But I actually have a lot of you to thank for this because I talked about it in my What's Coming to VOD, and then a lot of you recommend watching it, that you really, really liked it in film festivals. So this one just hit VOD this month, and a beautiful story about a immigrant and undocumented immigrant woman who is trying to make her a better life for her and her daughter. She gets into this situation where she's living in a house and with this woman who's looking after her uncle who's terminally ill. And it seems too good to be true for her and her daughter in this situation where she's getting paid a lot. And let me tell you, it just may be. It's a very twisted ride, but I love the main character, the way that they tell her story. She just feels very real and raw, and her story is really not unique, but the way they tell it is really thoughtful, and I really, really enjoyed this film, and I would highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. After this, I watched P2 and ATM. This was for Does This Offend You? P2 is a great slasher, holiday slasher set after a Christmas party. Is it after? It's a few days after a Christmas party where Wes Bentley basically is obsession over our main character. They have to fight it out in a parking lot. It's a very basic story, but very good. I really like that slasher. And then I watched ATM, which has Josh Peck in it, and is they mirror each other, P2 and ATM, but I would say P2 is better. But ATM is about 3 people being locked in an ATM little booth, as you can see here, and someone, an unknown villain, is stalking them and just like watching them. And yeah, you know, slashings begin. Probably wouldn't recommend ATM to you, but if you do want to watch it, it's on Tubi for free in America or some countries. After this, I did a whole, look how many Christmas movies I watched. I watched How the Grinch Stole Christmas, and I have a question. In all of the Grinch movies, I think this is the only Grinch movie I've seen. I haven't seen the cartoon. Does it start with a shaving incident? I do think it's weird that this whole movie is based on him shaving and getting bullied about shaving. Jim Carrey is great in this. He's suited to the role, but I don't know. I'm not as attached to it as other people, I think. It's a cute movie. It's fun to watch. Yeah, it's just a bizarre one, isn't it? It's a funny thing to exist. After this, I watched Krampus, which is one of my favorite Christmas horror movies. Absolutely love it. Dark, disturbing, ingrained in folklore. I love the creatures, the fantastical elements. It's about a family who, you know, have lost the spirit of Christmas, and how the Krampus comes and all of his little devils come and they're all demented little toys. I love it. I think it's so fun and so dark. The ending, oh my God, oh my God. I remember the first time I saw that film and I just love it. Tree Venge, something I watch every Christmas. This cute little short film that is on YouTube. You can watch for free, 16 minutes long, will blow your mind. They go all the way there and then beyond. It's about the trees getting their revenge on the humans after being, you know, cut down and decorated, hung up dead in people's houses. So if you haven't seen that, definitely put it on the roster for next year. Black Christmas, chilling, and even more chilling every time I see it. And I watched this with a group of people, and I'm sorry, I get on my soapbox every time with this movie because everyone hated the remake, but I can't stress enough how the original is just as much of a political film. If you haven't rewatched it in a while, maybe you should, because I feel like it's even more so the messaging is like political, which is the problem a lot of people have with the newer film. I didn't love the newer film, but that wasn't the issue I had with it. This film is so well done and so creepy, terrifying. What an interesting way to display the time as well, the time it was made with the technology and how they utilize that. You just can't redo that. So I absolutely love Black Christmas. If you haven't watched it, it's a Canadian slasher about these women in a sorority house who are just living in fear and no one will help them, basically. After that, I watched Violent Night, which came out last year. Yeah, it's the new David Harbour, well, I guess last year's David Harbour Santa film about a rich family who kind of turn on each other, and then people break in trying to rob them during Christmas. And the only person around to help is Santa. And it becomes this fantastical kind of action movie that's full of blood and gore. And my favorite thing about it is it's completely wholesome while being completely horrific in terms of the gore and violence at the same time. So it's a very interesting niche audience. I really like that. After that, I watched Nightmare Before Christmas, which is a favorite for me. 5 stars. What else can you say about Nightmare Before Christmas? Beautiful musical about these little creatures that I don't even mean well, but are not meant for this world and are not meant for Christmas time, but in fact Halloween time. So when they cross over, it all goes wrong, and I love it. It's just chaos. And then after that, I watched one of my favorite movies of all time, which is Home Alone. If you don't know, biggest Home Alone fan. I watch this every single Christmas. Normally 1 and 2. We only had time for 1 this year. I love it. It's my favorite. You can do no wrong. I have the vinyl. We play the vinyl when we put up our Christmas tree. And yes, I'm a big fan. I'm a big Kevin McAllister fan. Okay, TV. I did watch a bit of TV this month as well. I watched the whole season of Only Murders in the Building, season 3, so the latest season. I liked the season a lot more than the last season. I think it flowed on really well, although I predicted what was going to happen from the start. I figured it out, but Paul Rudd is amazing in this. I know it's a little bit outdated now. I'm watching a little bit behind. It's a good one if you haven't watched it. It is a really snappy murder mystery comedy show with Selena Gomez and Steve Martin. I find it really easy and fun to watch. A lot of cameos. I had Meryl Streep in this season, which was amazing, but everyone's really good. I think it's fun and easy to follow. It's basically about a group of 3 friends who live in this building, and they try to follow murders that happen around them and make a podcast about it. The podcast bit is a little bit iffy here and there, but I really liked this season. I thought it was the best story so far, so I enjoyed that. I watched Love Has Won, The Cult of Mother God. This was one of the weirdest true crime series I've watched because the way they talk about it is if nothing bad happened and nothing illegal really happened. It is a very strange way to present a cult, and I kind of enjoyed that because in one sense it was so, I don't know if it's like enabling people, but I felt like it was so sensitive about people's beliefs, even though a lot of it seemed very traumatic and toxic. I don't think they even touched on how toxic it was, the way that people spoke about it who were interviewed and were part of it. It's about a woman who, I guess her whole life, she has like the main character syndrome, and she started this whole cult about her and how she's basically God. And yeah, everything around her and how they house themselves and live together in this space and just their dynamics. And it starts with like a tragic event that happens with it and kind of goes backwards. I don't want to spoil anything, but it's well worth a watch. I think there's like 4 episodes or 3 episodes. It's a wild one. So if you like true crime, definitely get onto this if you haven't seen it already. I know a lot of people were talking about it. And then the last thing I did watch, which I can't believe I'm admitting to you, I watched The Idol. The whole thing. It is only 5 episodes. They are about an hour long, so I don't think I'm helping myself. I know that there was apparently 1 episode that was cut, but I can't stress enough that this show, part of it was so disturbing and belongs on one of my disturbing lists so badly. I was actually kind of amazed or impressed by it, but then the other half of it is just horrendous. Parts of this TV show is softcore porn, and then other parts are just people performing for no reason, but just to show off their talents, and it's meant to be them doing that in the show, but it feels like that in real life. It was made by The Weeknd, like he was one of the co-writers as well, and I just don't, I need some follow-up information. Lily Rose Depp is good in it, but I just don't know what they were thinking or if it's an editing issue. The whole TV show is basically about, she is this star and then she gets into this entrapment. She gets into this like relationship with a guy who owns a bar, and they have this really toxic relationship, and all his people and his like little community. I can't even, like, I just don't even, you don't know what's happening really. Is it a cult? Kind of. And the last episode is meant to be like a reveal kind of thing, and it makes no sense. And a lot of people say it's because an episode was cut. A lot of people have different interpretations of what it means. And it's just a dumpster fire, to be completely honest. And it's something I actually will not forget. I was really disturbed by this show. Like, there's some really disturbing aspects psychologically. I would not recommend it though. No recommendations from me. Anyway, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. If you are looking for horror movies, if you want to see what horror movies you may have missed from this year, you are in the right place, because I did a list of 100 horror movies that came out this year. I've actually done this for the past 3 years, so if you want to check out any other ones, there is a spreadsheet usually connected to each video, which will allow you to go through and highlight which ones you haven't seen. So if you're looking for stuff to add to your to watch list, here you go. Stay safe and stay spooky, and I'll see you guys in 2024.